We are getting close to the autumnal equinox and the beginning of fall. Looks like fall-type weather isn't far behind. Lots to talk about in the September 17th edition of the Water Resources Outlook. So let's begin with past rainfall and a 30-day precipitation departure from normal. And over most of the southeast, we have a very mixed bag where we have some places along the Gulf Coast in Florida that are well below normal, and we have parts of Florida that are above normal. We get into the peninsula, and we've been below normal for the last 30 days. But as we move up the East Coast into Georgia, parts of North Carolina and South Carolina, we have some areas that are above normal, and we have a little bit of flooding in those areas. We'll show that in just a little while. But otherwise, it's pretty spotty, pretty typical of this time of year and for summer. So the 28-day stream flows, this is the 28-day average stream flows, and as you can see, in the last few months, we've been having mostly near normal. While we're starting to creep down a little bit below normal, we've got some spots of yellow, which is the 10 to 24% through parts of Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. So we have a little bit of that in the central parts of the state, and as we get a little bit further south in the state, we see a little bit of that much below normal in Georgia. So we're starting to creep into a little bit of drought, and the drought monitor will reflect that in a moment. Here are the Southeast River Forecast Center conditions as of today. We have a couple of places in minor flood on the coastal areas of North Carolina and in the eastern part of Florida. And then we have some in action stage along the Florida Gulf Coast. So we do have a little bit of rises. They've come down over the last few rainfalls. But for the most part, everything is below flood. Again, pretty normal this time of year if we haven't had any tropical weather. So as for the Southeast Drought Monitor, many areas have shown some abnormally dry. We saw earlier the amount of rainfall we've had right along the Gulf Coast in the Big Bend area, and we have some moderate drought and even up to severe drought in parts of South Georgia. Again, we just haven't had a great deal of rainfall in there. We've had a little bit of rainfall that have helped to improve things a little, but at this time of year we don't expect a whole lot of improvement unless we get significant rainfall in the area. So here's a look at our lawn and garden index. Now this goes back to July 30th when we last had our last water resources outlook, and this is part of the reason we have that moderate drought in there, but that area has kind of changed a little bit. This is the September 17th look at it, and we have had more rainfall. Now this is the top layer of the soils, and we've had enough rainfall that those top layers are in pretty good shape right now in many parts of the southeast. The one area in Alabama and in eastern Mississippi, it's a little bit dry in those areas, but over most of the rest of the southeast, we're in pretty good shape. As for our river climatology, we are in our 38th week of the year, and we are in our second peak. Now that second peak usually comes during the tropical season, and that's usually when we get most of our tropical weather. We are in the peak of tropical season, but right now, as things have been most of the year, it's been pretty quiet, and it looks like it's going to stay quiet for the rest of the hurricane season. So we probably won't get this second peak like we would usually expect when we would have an active tropical season. And now we'll take a look at the meteorology with a little help from our friends up at the Weather Prediction Center up in Washington. And this is our current look at the weather. And as you can see over the southeast, there is a stationary front that's kind of hanging into the southeast. And with this, we've had some showers and thunderstorms associated with this. Now, by Friday of this week, that front will push down a little bit further, and we'll have a little bit of reinforcing cooler air. So it looks like we're starting to turn the corner, as I mentioned earlier, on our more fall weather, a little bit drier weather in the southeast. Still no chances for tropical weather, at least in the near future. And so it looks like we'll start to reinforce a little bit more cold air in the southeast, but continue with chances for rain in Florida as those fronts stall in Florida. So here's continued with the short-term outlook, and this goes through Wednesday, September 24th. And as you can see, this particular shot is for Monday of next week, September 22nd. And again, we get more reinforcing cooler air. And by next Wednesday, a week from today, we should have high pressure kind of centered over the southeast and drier air pushing into southeast. And again, with chances for rain as those frontal systems don't push far enough to completely push them out of Florida and keep Florida in a chance for rain. So our total basin precipitation from today through next Wednesday looks to be mostly along the Atlantic coast. We have some rain along the Atlantic coast, but the heaviest of rain being in central to South Florida, mostly South Florida. It looks like there's a gradient between the heavier rain in South Florida and what we get in North Florida. So we're not expecting a significant round of rain in most of the area, just in Florida right now. And then as we look at our midterm outlook, this goes to the end of September. It looks like the frontal systems will continue to push through, will continue to get into the southeast, but will push through and not get through Florida. So that chance for rain will stay in that area, looks like, through the end of September. And now we'll look a little bit further out and check out La Nina and El Nino and the ENSO predictions. And here's our prediction from CPC and the models that are showing whether we're going to have a weak or a moderate El Nino. We'd been talking about a strong El Nino for a long time, and right now it looks like somewhere between the weak and moderate El Nino, and that's just as the temperatures warm during those winter periods. It looks like it will probably affect our weather in the southeast. And here is the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center for October through December for precipitation. And right now they're showing equal chances over most of the southeast, with a better chance for rain in South Florida. Now the models and the forecasters are a little at odds on what exactly is going to happen, and right now there's a chance that much of the southeast could be wet during that time, with October being slightly drier and then the November and December time frame being a little more wet. And we'll have to watch that, and hopefully by the middle of October or early October, when we do another water resources outlook, we'll have a little better feel for what's going to happen. But for right now, looks like equal chances over most of the southeast, with a leaning towards maybe a little bit wetter over parts of the southeast. Now the outlook for January through March 2015, again, this is based on an El Nino. In some cases, maybe a moderate El Nino, where we have wetter conditions over much of the southeast, equal chances over our eastern areas in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, and then the Ohio Valley being a little bit drier. And right now we're almost leaning away a little bit from that below normal chances for rainfall in the Ohio Valley and Indiana and so forth, and that gradient between it. Still looks like we're looking at wet conditions, the better than normal chances for wet conditions in the southeast. So here's our bottom line. In the short term, less rain expected the next couple of weeks, or at least the next week, over most of the southeast, except for Florida, where wet season is winding down, but fronts continue to move down into the state and stall. So they have a focus for rainfall over that part of the state. So the chances for rain are still good in Florida, but it looks like we're going to be a little bit drier in the rest of the southeast. As for long term, continued quieter than normal hurricane season that looks like it's not going to stop, and the weak to moderate El Nino expected going into winter. So it looks like that's impacting our winter weather, as we saw with the precipitation forecast. Our next water resources outlook is scheduled for October 7th. Thank you for listening.